St. Augustine, Florida. Hello, this is Jim from RV4x40.com. Welcome to the channel today. Before I talk about the video, just want to pass along that Chris and I are both still socially distancing and ensconced pretty tightly in our motorhome, so we're safe from all the COVID-19 things that are going on right now. And not to worry about us, we are doing our thing and staying away, using grocery delivery where we can, and just minimizing our contact with the outside world. And so I hope you are all safe and healthy and doing well with this disease as it progresses through their country. We were able to visit St. Augustine before all this happened, and so we've got some video and some pictures to show you today of our tour there. St. Augustine, I believe, claims to be the oldest town in North America. Can't vouch for that, but it is certainly a very old town with a lot of history involved with it and a lot of things to see when you go to visit the town. There's an old fort there which was built by the Spanish explorers, and it has been attacked many times by boat and with cannon fire and those kinds of things. And as opposed to Fort Sumter, which we showed you in an earlier video, which was a modern 19th century fort built out of brick, and it was fairly easily demolished by cannon fire during the Civil War. The Spanish fort in St. Augustine, however, has been there for much longer, and it has survived many more cannon attacks, and it's the way the walls are constructed. They're somewhat soft and pliable because of the materials used, and so it would tend to absorb cannon fire and cannonballs rather than be broken down by them. So it was very interesting to see the difference between the two forts, the way they were built and the way they survived, and the kind of warfare that went on back centuries ago. We hope you enjoy the tour as we take you through part of St. Augustine, Florida.
Thank you.
St. Augustine is situated on the Atlantic coast of northeast Florida. It was founded on September 8, 1565 by Spanish explorers and is the oldest continuously inhabited European settlement in the contiguous United States. It was named because the first Spanish ships in the area first sighted land on August 28th, which is the feast day of St. Augustine. The city served as the capital of Florida for over 200 years. The Spanish ruled Florida until 1763, when the Treaty of Paris ended the 7 Years' War between Britain on one side and France and Spain on the other. That treaty ceded Florida to Britain in exchange for Cuba and the Philippines. Most Spanish St. Augustinians left Florida for Cuba and Florida became the 14th and 15th North American colonies of Great Britain, with East and West Florida. The Florida colonies remained loyal to Britain during the American Revolution, but the Treaty of Paris in 1783, which recognized the former 13 colonies as independent countries, also ceded Florida back to Spain and granted the Bahamas to Britain. With this result, some of the town's Spanish citizens elected to return to St. Augustine. After the American Revolution, Spain was occupied with Napoleon in Europe and neglected Florida as an unprofitable and backward society. The new United States considered Florida vital to its interests as it expanded and maneuvered to acquire it. The Adams-Onis Treaty, ratified in 1821, ceded Florida to the United States. When Spain ceded Florida to the U.S., St. Augustine was designated as the capital of the Florida Territory. The territorial government moved the capital to Tallahassee in 1824, which remains the capital today. The Florida National Guard, which traces its history back to the 1565 Spanish founders of St. Augustine, still has its headquarters in St. Augustine. The Castillo de San Marcos, literally St. Mark's Castle, is the oldest masonry fort in the continental United States. It was designed by Ignacio Daza, with construction starting in 1672 and was completed in 1695. It was constructed after a raid by an English privateer in 1668 destroyed much of St. Augustine and heavily damaged the existing wooden fort. The fort is made of coquina. This is a soft limestone made primarily of broken shells. It is so soft that it is often dried for years in the sun before being suitable as building material. The coquina used in building the Castillo was mined on a neighboring island and transported by ship across the bay to the shore at St. Augustine. The fort has a surrounding moat, which was originally a dry moat, but it has been water-filled at various times. It is basically a square block with fortification bastions on the four corners. On the two corners along the seaward side, there were also observation towers erected. Multiple embrasures were built into the curtain wall along the top of the fort, as well as into the bastions for deploying cannon of various calibers. There are a number of gun ports in the wall, as well as sally ports for use by infantry soldiers. Castillo de San Marcos was attacked several times and besieged twice, the first time in 1702 and later in 1740, both times by the English. The fort was never taken by force, and the soft nature of the coquina allowed it to absorb the impact of cannon fire, while stronger materials like the brick used at Fort Sumter crumbled under the impact of cannonballs. Possession of the Castillo has changed 6 times, all peacefully. 4 different governments have controlled the fort: Spain twice, Great Britain, the United States twice, and the Confederate States of America. Perhaps infamously, the United States has also used the fort as a military prison to incarcerate Native Americans, starting with the Seminoles and including Chiricahua Apache and members of the Plains tribes. Ownership of the Castillo was transferred to the National Park Service in 1933, and it remains a popular tourist attraction today. After the Civil War, in 1883, Henry Flagler, who was a co-founder of the Standard Oil Company, spent the winter in St. Augustine. He considered the hotels and transportation in the area as inadequate, but had the idea to make St. Augustine into a winter resort for wealthy Americans. He bought several short-line railroads and combined them into the Florida East Coast Railway in 1895. By 1887, he had completed 2 very large, very ornate hotels in St. Augustine, the 450-room Hotel Ponce de Leon and the 250-room Hotel Alcazar. He then furnished the Hotel Casa Monica Cordova across the street from the 2 existing hotels. With his work, he radically changed the appearance of St. Augustine, giving it a new skyline, and started the characteristic use of Spanish Renaissance Revival architecture seen widely in Florida today. Flagler extended his railroad south to Palm Beach and Miami in the early 20th century, and the wealthy winter trade moved to South Florida, where the climate is warmer and freezes are rare. St. Augustine still attracted tourists, and the tourist industry became the dominant factor in the local economy. you enjoyed this quick visit through St. Augustine that we were able to take and show you some of the things that we saw when we were there. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, we would appreciate it if you would do that. Click on the subscribe button down below, and then you can click on the bell icon to be notified when we post a new video. In the meantime, as we travel the highways and byways of America, we hope to see you somewhere. If not, we hope to see you on the channel again next week.